Welcome back, Wizards, to yet another episode of the Wizard Factory podcast, where you subscribe for weekly videos exploring deeper knowledge of the universe and yourself. My name is Logan Hart.
And I'm Brian Easterday.
And we are joined this day by Anastasiya, also known as Lady Anarki. And Anastasiya is the co-founder of Be Your Own Vault, Phone Hodl, and the Nexus Kids Charity. She's been involved in the cryptocurrency industry since 2016, fueled by her passion of helping individuals to gain financial freedom and protect their wealth. She has diverse skills in content creation, education, social media, community coordination, tech support, and business development for startups like Ubiquity, Nexus Kids Charity, and Exodus Wallet. That's impressive. Personal friend of mine, very, very lovely human being, and we're so happy to have you on the show. Welcome, Anastasiya.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm really excited. I love your show. I love all the spiritual aspects to it because that's kind of where my roots come from. So I'm honored to be here.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, one of the reasons I wanted to choose you for this interview to get into this topic sort of for the first time on this platform is because not only do you have a very good, extensive background working in the industry and learning about the technology, but also you're a big fan of Mark Passio, and you have sort of that foundational knowledge of natural law, sovereignty, freedom, etc. So perfect person, in my opinion, to help bring this topic into light. So
Thanks.
Yeah. So you people out there, if you're new to this channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, join the tribe. And let's get into this. So we're talking about cryptocurrency today, but to truly understand that from a fundamental level, you have to first understand what is blockchain technology. This is what cryptos like Bitcoin and other altcoins are actually built on as a technical foundation. So I guess we could start there. Anastasiya, if you'd like to describe what is blockchain.
Yeah. Well, blockchain is basically a chain of blocks. But the reason that that's important actually is very much tied in with the currency aspect and with Bitcoin specifically. Because one of the biggest things that we have on the internet is that we can't or couldn't before validate any kind of ownership, right? We can copy and paste everything, we can download stuff. This is why the pirating industry has been so huge, of downloading movies and music without having to pay for them because they're just files on the internet and they can be copied. And when Satoshi Nakamoto, the anonymous group or person that began working on the Bitcoin code, started the project, his whole thing was to create a currency that was verifiable and better and more sounder and harder than the currencies that we have today, which are controlled by governments. So when he created this blockchain structure, he used a system of proof of work. So having your computer do all of these really difficult, long mathematical equations to come up with answers to basically verify something on that chain of blocks, on that code that's constantly running. And so that's basically what a blockchain is. A blockchain is kind of a ledger on the internet that saves all of the information for whatever is happening on that blockchain, and it distributes it to other computers so that all of these computers are kind of working together to solve these problems to keep this code running and doing what it's supposed to be doing correctly.
Right, that's a great description. So essentially, it's a way to duplicate the information so widely and ultimately decentralize it so that if one had a discrepancy such as a fraud or even just an error, the other ones would check that and basically shut that node down, almost like it's a cancer cell. Like,
yeah,
and so
people have called it the truth machine. Because of exactly that point, that if you're trying to verify it and something is incorrect, then all of the other things would know. It's like being it's like instead of texting your friends individually of where you're going to meet, and then one of your friends accidentally going to the wrong bar, it's actually having a group text where everybody can verify, no, you were supposed to be here at 7 o'clock and it was supposed to be this place. And I don't know where you got that other information from, but we're all here. So you got to get here too, you know?
That's a really good way to put it. Because if that one person, they're trying to say, no, it said 5 o'clock, I swear, then the proof is right there. And so that's what's amazing about that is it's a trustless system. And obviously you say blockchain and people who are familiar with that are automatically going to think about the currency application, but to be real, the blockchain has so many more application potential than that, and really the currency aspect is just the beginning.
Yeah, actually one of the first projects that I started working with back in the day was Ubiquity, and it's a company created by one of my friends, Nathan Wozniak. And it was, blockchain was a really big thing when we looked at real estate. You know, there's an opportunity to buy titles and to use currencies like Bitcoin for transacting and verifying all of that information. And so he looked at it and he was like, well, if we can get public records and title companies onto this system, then there wouldn't be so much fraud and so much discrepancies throughout the entire real estate industry. Because you have this title, right? Especially in third world countries, this is a huge problem. You have this title, it's a piece of paper, it's kept in some record office, in some fireproof box, maybe if you're lucky, right? And basically anything can happen to that piece of paper, and your family could own that house for generations and generations. And then all of a sudden, some big corporation can come in, can collude with the government bureaucrats, say, actually, this is, our land, print a different piece of paper that's official, go there and be like, well, we have the title to this land and you don't, and now it's ours. If you put that kind of data on the blockchain, then anybody can go online and look at that information and be like, well, actually, this was the original owner of the lease or the title, and they've been here for this many years, and this is all of the other information on the property, and it's been verified. And so if you guys want ownership to this property, then give us the private key, verify cryptographically on the internet that you own this title. And that's the really awesome part about blockchain, is that it gives us ownership of things on the internet. We see this a lot in gaming now too. You can actually have cards, right? Before you had to hold physical, Pokemon cards or baseball cards. Now you can actually hold a card online. And even if somebody does copy it, that doesn't mean that that's the original. They can copy the image, but they can't copy the essence of that card actually existing online.
Yeah, it's kind of like a digital serial number, except that you can't scratch it off. It's on a system, on a network that can't be altered or hacked or changed or anything like that. I mean, it really is truly incredible. And as we can see, there's so many ways that this can very much revolutionize many industries. You mentioned real estate, automotive stuff. It could even be things like furniture. Everything has its own digital fingerprint, so to speak.
Yeah. Basically anything that has public information that needs to be owned by somebody, and you need to prove that that's owned by somebody. Which with medical records is a little bit different, because a lot of people have talked about medical records and putting them on the blockchain. But I think we still have a ways to go to make sure that that information is encrypted and private. And when it's shared, that access can be revoked. And again, you can still copy information, right? And you can still paste it in or take pictures of it or screenshots. So that's one of the things that I was always interested in the beginning, of being able to access my records easily, and then making sure that nobody else could access my records unless I allowed them to. Because a lot of that happens in hospitals sharing stuff with health insurance companies, and then you switching health insurance companies, but they still have all of your information, and et cetera, et cetera. It's a big privacy issue, I think.
Right.
Really, I mean, just to me, the part that sticks out to me most about the potential behind it is the fact that it's a decentralized technology, which in the theme of the show, we very much are about the decentralization, not getting away from whether it's monotheism or monarchy or just getting stuck in where any one source has all the power or control.
Monolithic.
Yeah, so the fact that it's decentralized and that it has to be verified by that, that could be, like I said, or like Logan said, you totally revolutionize a lot of different industries, when used in the right place, and currency is definitely a great place to start with that, because that's such a, when you understand it's just energy, it's a medium of exchange. But when one group of people have all the centralized control of that, that then allows them a lot of control over everything else. So decentralizing it and getting it back to where, everybody can look at it and can be verified. And, all this fraud and things that a lot of these larger corporations and governments take part in, it can radically get rid of that, especially, as Anastasiya said, anything to do with public information, that everybody has the right to and to know about, that's definitely something that is very powerful in its potential, I think, to look at what it can do.
Right, and that potential is exactly what has the powers that be and the institutions very scared of Bitcoin and the like, because it very much threatens their way of life, or by life I mean parasitism. And this episode is meant to be an introduction to these concepts that maybe people haven't really heard about at all, or just haven't heard enough to be interested in it. But there is an absolute wealth of information out just on YouTube alone that you can find out more about what is blockchain, how does it work, what are the different applications that are being worked with currently. This is pretty much what I've been looking into since the summer of last year. And, I still consider myself to be very much a beginner or a noob, but I'm to the point now where I can at least have a conversation and not just be like, what, so. In fact, I guess it's worth mentioning that Anastasiya was one of the first people that helped me along that process. So she gives these types of consultations, and I was feeling like something's calling me to invest in cryptocurrency, but I don't know enough about it yet. So I wanted to speak with her and let her point me in the right direction, and it was very helpful. So it's kind of interesting now that when we had that conversation, I didn't know anything, and now we're able to actually get into this as more. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's kind of how it starts. You just, you stumble upon it, and something interests you, and there's some kind of curiosity, and you're like, oh, what's this new thing that we've never heard about? Because it is very new. Everything about Bitcoin, everything about the blockchain is very new. This is not something that's been done before. This isn't something that's been created before. It's a completely new technology. And I mean, blockchains have been created before, but haven't been used in this way. One of the biggest things that Satoshi solved was the double spend problem of, if I have only $10 in my account and I send that $10 to, Alice, and at the same time I send that $10 to Bob, well, who gets the money, and am I now negative, and then who pays for that negative balance, and then is there fraud involved, et cetera, et cetera. So that was one of the big things that Satoshi had solved within the blockchain space, to actually have it be utilized for currency and for ownership of other assets online.
Right. So yeah, now that we've kind of covered the base of what is blockchain, at least kind of what the basic explanation, let's get into the application of currencies, and, what is Bitcoin? What is all these others? Those who may have just heard a little bit about this, you've probably heard of maybe Ethereum or, Litecoin or something like that. And so would you like to expand upon why cryptocurrency? Why is this actually a useful alternative? Why should we like this more than fiat or our current dollar, et cetera?
Yeah. So this is actually a really great opportunity to look at this. We have, the coronavirus pandemic sweeping across the world. And what it's doing is it's not causing, but it's highlighting what has been happening in our economies and what has been happening in our financial markets. for over 100 years now. And the reason we saw this again in 2008, when the last recession happened, when the big market crash happened, we also saw it back in the 1930s. And this is why Bitcoin was created 11 years ago, exactly because of these kinds of market conditions that we're seeing again now. So for anybody who hasn't gotten into Bitcoin before and doesn't really understand why all of us are freaking out about this new currency, this is why, because the Federal Reserves and the central banks of all of these government countries that are super centralized are controlled by a very small amount of people, families who have held onto this wealth for generations. They created these banks and they created these fiat systems of money where they get to control the supply. They get to control who gets it, at what kind of rate, who can loan it out, who can't get it. There's been, companies came around to create credit scores to tell you whether you were allowed to use this kind of wealth, this kind of money for starting up businesses or paying for homes or, providing for your family, et cetera, et cetera. And the way that they've done it has been extremely unethical and very much immoral and also really dumb, just logically dumb. You can't continuously print more money and think that the value of each one of those units of money isn't going to go down until it's eroded into nothing. And we've seen this throughout, history that you have $10. This is a Venezuelan bolivar that's basically worth nothing now, right? But you have a $10 bill or 10 bolivar, and then all of a sudden the Federal Reserve prints another 10 and another 10 and another 10, and all of a sudden this bill isn't worth that much anymore. It's worth a lot less. And when you go to the store, they now want you to pay twice or 3 times or 5 times as much of these paper currencies to get the goods that you need. And eventually that kind of system catches up to itself and collapses under all of the stress of that kind of continuous printing. We just saw this because of the coronavirus. All of the banks are now scrambling, trying to keep the economy stable, but they can't because this Ponzi scheme has been running for over 100 years. And it's coming to an end. We've been talking about how it's coming to an end. All Austrian economists have been talking about how it's going to eventually collapse and it's going to be really bad. And this pandemic that's happening is the pin in that bubble, in that balloon of all of these fiat currencies starting to crumble and starting to come down. Even though they've been trying to prop it up, they've been trying to keep the system going for the last 11 years, and it's ginormous. Is gigantic. And this is why Bitcoin is so much better than these kinds of fiat currencies. Like you guys said, one is decentralized. So there's nobody that can go in and say, no, this is how the currency is going to work now. No, we get more of this currency than you guys do because of some special privilege. And it's gosh, there's so much. It's also unconfiscatable, right? So that's one of the things that I always talk about to new people is that if you own your Bitcoin, then nobody else can touch it. I have friends right now today talking about how they're trying to take money out of the bank and they can't. And this is already starting, and this has happened in countries before when crises like these hit. Everybody runs to the bank to try to get cash out because they need all of that cash to be able to go to the store and, buy their toilet paper or buy hopefully food and water first. And they can't because the bank says, well, now there's a limit. One of my friends just said she's not allowed to take out more than $3,000. She's not allowed to take $3,000 out of the bank. And at a different bank, she can only take out half of that, right? So only $1,500. Another one of my friends has been having trouble transferring money from bank to bank because of this, right? But when you own Bitcoin, you don't have to ask any kind of bank for permission. You can just go online, you can put in your PIN or password to your wallet or your private key if you lose that information, right? Your private key is the most important thing. And you can go online and you can access your money and you can send it to the business down the street and be like, hey, this is what I need for this much. And then they have it and it's locked away under their private key. And there's no middleman in that transaction that tells you when you can or cannot spend your money. So that's another really, really important part of Bitcoin. And that ownership is something that's completely different from what we've had in these fiat systems. And the second most important part, I think, of Bitcoin is that there's only 21 million of them. So there's no such thing as the constant printing of money to devalue it over time. You're always going to have 21 million once all of those are mined, and that's how much you're going to have. So right now, forgive me for geeking out, because it really is like a really terrible and tragic situation that we're about to face, right? And many people are going to get hurt, and many people are going to lose their retirement funds, and it's just, and it could get really bad before it gets good again, right? And hopefully, you know, most of everybody survives through it, and we can mitigate this kind of stuff, and we can help each other as communities. But the fact is, the more all of these banks print, the less value our money is going to have. While Bitcoin, in a couple of months, is going to have what we call the halvening. And that's when the rate of the supply that's being printed of Bitcoin is halved. It's cut in half, right? So there's going to be less supply after that date in May, whenever it is, I'm actually not sure when. But it's going to be less supply, which means that there's going to be more demand, and that means that the price is going to go up because there's less supply coming out, but still the same demand. And it could also be going up because people are going to start realizing that, you know, while your cash becomes worthless, Bitcoin is only going to get more valuable. And that's why it's a really great store of value for the future and after kind of black swan events like this one. Right.
And would you say that the fear, because you talked about people running to the banks to pull their money out, people are doing that with the cryptocurrencies as well currently at this time because of what the future may hold in the short term. And once all of this pandemic stuff blows over, then that's definitely going to have a major correction and probably have a huge spike. Not to mention the halving coming up, like you said, there's a precedent of a huge bull run, parabolic, during, you know, before and after that event. And also, not only is the supply cut in half, but just think about over time, people are going to lose their private keys. Some Bitcoin is going to get lost forever. Once that private key is lost, it's gone. There's no way to ever get that back.
Yeah, yeah, and there's already millions of Bitcoins that are just poof, gone. Like pretty much every original Bitcoiner from back when Bitcoin wasn't worth anything and it was just an experiment and nobody really knew if it was going to work or not. Every one of them has a story of how they lost some private keys. And at that point, it was like, you know, they would have like 100, 200, you know, 4,000 Bitcoin in a wallet because it wasn't worth anything, right? So yeah, so we're seeing that divergence of Bitcoin is going to keep going up, and the dollar and all other fiat currencies are just going to keep going down because that's the way that the systems are created. Those are the fundamentals of each one of the systems, and the fundamentals for Bitcoin are just better objectively as a currency.
Right. It's funny to see how they almost work exactly opposite of each other. So it kind of makes sense that only one of those would be the right thing since the other one's doing the exact opposite. And so and on this show, we like to compare things to natural law and what is energy want to do. That's what it's the flow of energy, and money is just a current of energy, a currency.
Yeah. I mean, there is infinite abundance within the universe. There's infinite energy and infinite value, and the value is infinite in us. So everything that we bring to the world can be extremely valuable to other human beings. You know, for like we're looking at people who decided to create ways, right, to warn others of road pirates. And we have companies like Uber that were like, well, the taxi mafias are basically raping you guys financially. So, we're just going to drive you because we're in the community and we're safe and there's a process to go through it. And we're just trying to help, our neighbors get to new places. So
it's about finding a better way to do something, solving a
exactly,
problem.
yeah. So that value is infinite, and we should be like, we are already more abundant than all of humanity before us, right? Even in these trying times, in a universe that continuously rains abundance upon us, we should have some kind of system where that abundance is constantly multiplied and added to our societies. And I think Bitcoin is a really good vehicle for that. That's tangent, right? Because we can't really, most of us at least, can't really see energy. We know that it's there, we know that we're exchanging it somehow, but it's not so visible and tangible where Bitcoin is. And it's not without its problems. There's still a lot to do. There's still a lot of things to figure out. One of the next things that developers are going to have to work on is privacy. Because obviously the powers that be are trying to do everything they can to use this public information of everybody's wallets and everybody's financial status as something to surveil them, right? Something to kind of try to figure out how to control that. Try to see if they can somehow like gain that information and use that information for their own wants and desires, instead of just letting people, have their money and live and spend it how they want. So it's definitely interesting what's going on right now. And I think just to comment on what you said before, yeah, everything is crashing right now. All of financial assets are going down. Markets are super volatile. Everything's in turmoil. And the financial industry likes to use this word, safe haven, right? Safe haven assets, it's a financial term. In a crisis, what makes you safe, what the safe haven is your home, your family, food, water, and something that can protect all of those things. And those are the safe haven assets right now, right?
Yes.
Maybe there's financial instruments and the big boys are playing with them and trying to figure out where to move their money and how to make a profit off of this crisis. But the real safe haven assets for regular people are tangible goods that they need to survive, to stay through quarantine, or to just get to the next day, just get to tomorrow. Medicine, obviously, as well. So no, Bitcoin's probably not going to be a safe haven right now, but it's still, teetering between that like 5,000, maybe it might go down to 3,000. I don't know. I don't like to speculate on the price because I'm not a trader, but it's still around there. It's not, $1 is $1, but really it's worth way less. And one Bitcoin is one Bitcoin, and the one Bitcoin is still above $1. And probably will continue to be that. So as far as a store of value for the long term, I think it's probably one of the best, not financial advice, one of the best after this crisis kind of calms down. But during it, you can't beat the things that people need every day. And that's just how, pandemics and crises like that work.
Really, just when you really, I like to look at it, tie it back to cosmic law and sovereignty, and one of the things Anastasiya was, mentioning was that, in regards to being able to use your money whenever you want without someone being able to deny you that, or, charge you a fee for doing that, or what, whatever it may be, you're a lot more sovereign in your right to be able to have access to your finances and your currency. And that's, that's a major thing. If you have a lot of money, like, fiat money in a bank, but then all of a sudden they decide, to just shut it off, then that doesn't do you any good at all. So starting to, adapt and integrate technologies that are more in alignment with cosmic laws, it's definitely, something that needs to happen. But, part of adapting new systems is really the old system has to get to the point that people see that it's such a problem and that it's no longer working before they're really ready to look at new things. So then you kind of see these storms happen, like we saw in 2008 with the, the housing market really, crash and everything like that. and this is just kind of, the world economy right now is kind of in that same place. Which astrologically we have a lot of similar things going on, as we did at that time as well, which I find, very interesting to look at. But, it's all cycles for sure.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more about that actually. Like, how are you, what similarities are you seeing of what's going on kind of in the physical reality of what we can all kind of read and know about, and what the stars are showing?
Yeah, so I mean, like right now, a big one that would stick out to me would be like Rahu, for example, which is the north node of the moon. But in the Vedic mythology, he also represents our desires. So he deals with worldly things like wealth, or it could also be any kind of pleasure, or drugs, alcohol, things like that. But he in the Vedic system, we have lunar constellations, so there's the 12 regular zodiac constellations, but there's lunar constellations behind that as well. There's 27 of them, known as nakshatras. And the nakshatra that Rahu is in the Aridra nakshatra. And this is it's a nakshatra that is all about the storm, but it's a cleansing storm. So, Rahu is kind of like, anytime he comes into a sign or with another planet, it's like dropping a bomb in there. It's just very explosive kind of energy. So then when he's in a nakshatra like that is a storm, you get this very kind of explosive storm, but for the purpose of cleansing things. It's just that part of the cycle that's very tumultuous. But there's, in nature, you always have to see there's always some kind of destruction in order for something new to grow. So that's very much like a theme going on right now. We also have Saturn came into its own sign of Capricorn and is going to be there for the next few years. The Capricornian energy is all about hard work and discipline, and like looking at things in the long term. Saturn is, a representative of cosmic law. So it's about really, Saturn was just in Sagittarius for the last few years. So that it was all about really discovering your philosophy. Like, we saw a lot of people learning about natural law, cosmic law, and things. As it moves into Capricorn, that's when you're taking that philosophy and you're putting it into action. You're actually taking the discipline and putting it to work and applying it. So there is this storm, there's a struggle, and there's a lot of pressure. Saturn's a heavy planet that puts a lot of pressure, but that pressure at the same time, over time, once it's done and we continue to do that, that will create the change that we want to see. As then, Saturn, after a few years, will then move and transit back into Aquarius, which is another sign that it rules. Then along with Saturn and Capricorn, Mars is joining it on the 21st, and Mars is action in astrology. So then you're gonna have urge to be very disciplined and want to get serious about things. Which if people are worried about being quarantined, whatever personal projects you have or things that you've been wanting to do, or say you've been wanting to write a book or do anything like that, that's a great time to do that thing, because that astrologically, that's what energy is going on. You have your long-term goals that you need to be disciplined about doing. And then Mars is bringing the action in there. And then Jupiter joins them both on the 29th. So, you get more, Jupiter's like the guru, like the spiritual aspects. It also represents wealth and expansiveness. So, I mean, there's a lot of very major transits and conjunctions going on. Like anytime Saturn and Jupiter are conjunct, it doesn't happen very often, but whenever they are, there's always very major changes in society.
The two biggest bodies.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And the last time we saw like Jupiter kind of in this, these same kind of placements and energies was around 2008, which not just financially was a very crazy time, but I think on a personal level for a lot of different people was a crazy time. I know in my life, that was like the same year I was getting out of the Marine Corps, so I was having like, a total major shift in things. So it's interesting to look at and follow these cycles and observe them, but it does bring a sense of clarity. Like if you can see the bigger picture and what's going on. So instead of just getting caught, oh yeah, there's a storm getting on, and you're kind of worried and getting caught in the storm, you can observe, oh, this is a storm for cleansing. Like this is a good thing. It needs to happen. It's just part of the process. So I guess that's kind of how the biggest ones I would take from it currently right now.
Yeah, that's an awesome little addition throwing in to the
Yeah, I mean,
astrological climate.
it definitely feels like a cleansing storm to me.
Mhm.
It definitely, yeah, those kind of changes are very difficult and they're very tragic on this plane of existence. But when you're looking from up here, you can see why that kind of energy change is necessary. And I mean, everybody who's been in this cryptocurrency space for the last 11 years, plus minus, they've they've known that this is coming, and so I see a lot on crypto Twitter. I see a lot of my friends. They're very much prepared. They're ready. They know this was going on. And one of the best things that you can do in these kinds of scenarios is you can see it coming and you can prepare for it, because that makes it easier, not just for you and your family, but also for the lives that you touch around you. And I think these people are kind of at the forefront because they knew that this was coming, and this coronavirus was just the tipping point, right? The was it the over 3% rule or whatever it's called.
Mhm.
I think it's going to be difficult, and I think but we're going to see a lot of changes, and I think it's going to be for the best. And hopefully more people, because this is what I've been doing for the last couple of years. Is I've been trying to get more people into this because I knew that this was coming, and so I wanted them to be financially safer. I wanted them to have their wealth in something that they can have control over, right? I wanted them to have their wealth in something that can't be taken by anybody else. And we've been talking a lot about, personal responsibility and sovereignty. And that's one of the most difficult things to teach people is like, hey, if you lose your private key, you're not going to have that money anymore. If you don't clean your computer and you go on these sites and you get malware, you're going to lose your money. If you don't check your addresses every single time to make sure that the address didn't change somehow because you have some weird program running in the background by some hacker that installed it while you weren't looking, you're going to lose your money. And Be Your Own Vault is all about making people aware of those security risks and then preparing them so that either they never end up in that situation, or if they do end up in that situation, they know what to do and they know what the precautions are, and maybe they lose a little bit money here, but then all of the money in their hardware wallet is still safe for them and their future and their children.
Right.
And now that this is happening, all of those kind of things are the things that, hey, I should have thought about this. And maybe now people are going to start thinking, hey, all of those risks and that personal responsibility is still better and easier than dealing with what these people have created in our society. And so hopefully more and more of them will start paying attention to that, and we'll actually start getting into this currency, because we do need a network effect. We do need people to buy into it on some level and start using it so that it actually does help us in the future, all of us, right? All of humanity. And it's just that does mean that more people need to come in and more people need to start paying attention and learning about it and using it. It's not just, hey, us in this little corner, the new rich, right, that are going to come out of this crisis all rosy. No, the point is that we have to get everybody else on board so that in the long term, we're all better off.
Right. And that's actually the thing I wanted to wrap this up was with global adoption. But actually, there's a few points that I want to hit on very briefly before we tie it all together. Just kind of looking at the more practical and personable aspects to this conversation. So for the viewers, you probably have a few of these questions if you are new to this world of crypto. One of which may be, Bitcoin versus altcoins. So if I may attempt to sort of illustrate this, and then Anastasiya, you can come back through and clean up my little, imperfections. But essentially, Bitcoin is the household name brand for crypto, mostly because it has the most application as a currency that is stable, the code is solid, and it's scalable, which is very, very important with considering coins as it may be great in theory or on paper, but if too many, if it actually gets that global adoption, it's going to fail because it doesn't have the proper infrastructure to actually handle that much, volume essentially. And then, one last afterthought is that other altcoins are oftentimes more specified towards other utilities than actually a currency. Some are more like privacy focused currencies. Some are just things that add depth to the actual blockchain technology that has nothing to do with money actually, but it's then tokenized and still has an assigned value that you can predict and hold or whatnot. So that's my spiel on that. Do you have anything to add or correct about that?
Well, no, not correct. I think all of us are on our own journey through this, entirely new space, and a lot of us are the creators behind it and the supporters, and so there's lots of experimentation. This is all, completely new. Again, just 11 years right into the making. Side note, I am more and becoming more of a Bitcoin maximalist, and there's a lot of there's a lot of stigma around that phrase, which is why I don't really like to use it. But basically what I mean is that I think that coercive monopolies are bad, right? They're immoral because you're basically destroying your competition by some special privilege, kind of like what corporations do, or governments, which have a monopoly on violence, right? They have a monopoly on what they call justice. And then if somebody has a monopoly on justice, it doesn't really, it stops becoming justice and it starts becoming just whatever that they think that they want, right? Or whatever they make it. But natural monopolies do occur, right? And so you can have this, small culture on that island still trading shells, right, for value. And you can still have that small country in Europe, dealing with their own currency because it works for them and they have a very, very local economy. But for an international global currency that would work for everybody, I think we are going to move towards a natural monopoly in that, right? Right now we have the petrodollar, or the, Federal Reserve currency as the dollar in the world, but that's, again, coercive monopoly. I think Bitcoin is going to be the main currency out there. And that doesn't mean that Monero, for example, as the privacy coin, doesn't have its space, but Bitcoin could probably implement something like that. I think all other currencies are or cryptocurrencies are pretty speculative. So for anybody out there who's looking into them, I think you should be very careful. I think you can see on the charts, of Bitcoin doing its parabolic move, in 2017, and then kind of coming down, and then, doing its regular wave. And you can see a lot of the other cryptocurrencies just doing their 2017 curve and then never, ever coming back up. And with cryptocurrencies like that, you have to know that they might never go to zero. Like, they might stay at 15 cents forever. They might fluctuate like Dogecoin, from 0.001 cent to 0.003 cents to then go down. It could reach a full 1 cent, and then go back down. And again, we're discussing all of these things in fiat value, right? In dollar value. What happens when the dollar disappears and isn't the Federal Reserve currency anymore? And then what are you pegging it to, right? So what is the value of those cryptocurrencies if only a very, very tiny community is holding it for speculative value? And, that's not to say that people who believe in other cryptocurrencies or want to use them are wrong, because I don't really, I don't kind of subscribe to that philosophy. But I know for a fact that all of my friends and everyone that I know in the industry who is dubbed a Bitcoin maximalist have gotten into Bitcoin, gone through the altcoin market, lost money, gained money, did all of their speculative things, and then came back to Bitcoin, and are even more adamant about why, and how Bitcoin is a better currency than even all of the other cryptos. So that's just my 2 cents. You can still decide what you want to do, right? It's all about sovereignty and experimenting and trying new things and taking risks. This is a really, really risky endeavor in general. I mean, like right now, I'm kind of struggling with it because most of my money is in Bitcoin, and now I need cash, and it just did that huge dump, right? And now I'm kind of below where I last bought in, but I still need money to live, right? So there's definitely risks associated with all of this. But you just, you want to be careful and calm and make good decisions that you've thought through, and just be very, very speculative and very, very careful with the things that you invest and put your money into, because some of them may never go up. And if you're just doing it to, to get rich, that could backfire.
Right. That's definitely one thing I was going to hit on at some point, is the different motivations behind why to get involved in this space. For me, it's honestly a bit of kind of the mixture of, well, sure, I'd love to make a buck. I'd love to become prosperous by making a good investment, and there's nothing wrong with that. But then at the same time, I get to feel good about sort of supporting Viva la Revolution of the damn financial space, and in the much needed reinvention of our systems that are so clearly failing miserably. But the next quick one I wanted to hit on is kind of the mentality of trading versus hodl, which for those unknowing, that's just a little sort of crypto culture term for holding. It's hodl. It's like, the word switched around, but basically means to buy and just hold on to it. Like, don't sell, just hold it and try to ride the waves. You can definitely make really good money trading, but it's way riskier, and it's not recommended unless you actually know what you are doing. And even then, you're probably going to lose a lot before you start learning the system well enough to keep steadily profits. So, I mean, even me, I've done a very minimal amount of trading. If I buy a dip with some extra money that I can, a few hundred at a time, and maybe I profit 200 or 300 off of it, and then I sell it, and that's great. I don't get too crazy with it. You can get as involved as having every 5 minutes you have buy and sell orders that's trying to hit the highest high and the lowest lows, so that you're maximizing. And if you can pull that off, power to you, but just make sure that you don't take that lightly, getting involved, and start small. And I always say, though, just getting involved is a good move. And even if all you do is buy and hold it, that's a viable strategy.
Yeah, for sure. And that's what we talked about when you first got into it, right? Because you were like so excited, and you're like, what's this trading thing and investment and whatever. And I'm like, yeah, that's basically how I would break it down too. If you so I'm actually in Ensenada with Juan Galt and Ugly Old Goat. And Ugly Old Goat is a very, very amazing trader. He was in the top 10 on BitMEX for a bunch of years, and BitMEX is one of the leveraging exchanges where you can leverage your buys and sells and basically either short or long Bitcoin, and futures as well. And he was, the Ugly Old Goat was a big gold bug back in the day. So for him, years and years ago when he was in financial markets, Bitcoin was what they were trying to do with gold. They were trying to bring the gold standard back. They were trying to create new currencies. A lot of people during that time went to jail for trying to create new currencies, because you can't compete with a Federal Reserve. That's illegal, right? And he's an amazing trader in that he specifically teaches money management. And what that means is that you should basically, it's kind of like a little bit of best of both worlds. You have your hodl, you get in, you maybe dollar cost average when you first start out. You have a nice little stash that's, put away for your family. It's your savings. It's your, emergency fund. It's something that you don't touch for years, right? You put it in a hardware wallet. You make sure that the private key is safe. It's in a safe place. You make sure that, your mom knows where it is, or your wife, if something happens to you. That's your money. That's your savings, right? That's your retirement, however you want to call it. And then what you do after that is, you have a little bit of extra cash, maybe 100 or 200 bucks. And well, if you lose it, it's basically a weekend, with the boys, or a girls' night out at the bar, right? So you take that $100, $200 and maybe you put it in and you play with it. And your assumption is always that that money is something that I can lose. And if I lose it, I'm totally okay with it. And then, so then you kind of learn a little bit of how to trade. And you can definitely up that or just keep playing with that money until you get liquidated or until you, get some profits, and then you take those out and you put them in your, medium sized hodl that you have for that, 6 to 12 months of things that if something like what's happening right now happens, you have that extra cash to get what you need for your family and survive for those few couple months, pay your rent, pay your bills, etc. And I definitely recommend for anybody who's new, because again, this is not financial advice. I myself am not a trader, but to check out Ugly Old Goat's Medium account, because he puts out all of his information on there for free. He does this great newsletter. He doesn't, you can buy one of his actual newsletters where he gives you access to his own trading history and more information on what to do, but a lot of his content is free. And he really, really talks about that money management aspect and then trading a little bit to make sure that you never lose your hodl, but you can still kind of figure out how the markets work and earn a little extra money on the side too. I think trading takes a couple of years to really get good at. I think you have to be very disciplined in your emotions. And you have to also focus on your reactions to things, not necessarily on what the markets do, because nobody ever knows what the price is going to do. It could go up, it could go down, it could go sideways. But the most important thing is, how are you going to react to it going down or it going up or it going sideways or you getting almost liquidated or you making a bad call? Are you going to panic? Are you going to throw more money into it just to save it? We have a friend, and I'm sure, this is obviously definitely not the only scenario, but one of my friends lost everything. And he talked about this at a conference back in September, and his little son came in right when it had happened, and he was looking at the charts and he was just shocked and crying. And his son looked at him and he was like, "Daddy, what's wrong?" And he turned around, he was like, "I just lost everything that we had." Right? And that's a situation that you never want to be in, especially around your children, which is why it's so important to kind of, take trading easy and slow and learn about it and, read lots of books and listen to other traders. There's a lot of them out there that are great. I would say that most of the information that you need out there is free. You don't need to sign up to a $500 a month newsletter to some guy in a weird chat room that you found that, has 5,000 Twitter followers and is the new guru in crypto. You don't have to do that. You can just learn that stuff on your own, get free material, and if you find a really good mentor that you trust that could kind of show you the ropes and stuff, sure, do that too. Be very, very careful.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So the last couple of little real quick points, let's tell the viewers, if they are interested, say we've piqued their interest with this information and they want to maybe buy a little bit, how can they buy and how much do they actually need? Kind of almost ambiguous questions because there's so many different answers and, but I'll let you take that one.
Yeah. The first thing you should be looking at is making sure that you and your family have water, food, whatever it is, whatever that needs to be in your house to make sure that you and your family can, prosper, everything that you need. You want to make sure that that's the first place that your money is going to. And then you want to make sure that the money after that is going into your savings account. What if your car breaks down? What if you lose your job? Anything like that, you want to make sure that you have cash on hand. And then after that, if you have a little bit of extra, and it can be anywhere from $20, to $500 to $1,000 if you have that extra, right? And you're not afraid to lose that. You're not going to need that money in the next year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever kind of period you're looking at for your investment. Then you want to start buying a little bit of Bitcoin at a time, right? And so this is called dollar cost averaging. So instead of what you do is trying to buy the dip, so always trying to buy the low price in any small cycle, what you do is you just decide, I'm going to buy Bitcoin. I'm going to buy $20 of Bitcoin every Friday. And you do that, and no matter if the price is going up or down, that price averages out over time of what prices you're buying at.
Right.
And the most important thing is you don't need a whole Bitcoin. You can have 0.00005 Bitcoin, and that's fine too. That's your little nest egg, your little extra, your little experiment of, hey, does this virtual currency?
Right.
The next thing I'd say is what I usually recommend, and I go back and forth on this, but basically I think the best way to buy Bitcoin is to actually go to a meetup and talk to somebody who has Bitcoin and maybe buy a little bit from them in person so that they can walk you through it. The community is generally extremely helpful, and you know, and they want to help, and they can, you know, they can just give you that little bit of extra personality and personal experience, and give you a little bit of their tips of what they've done. And it's nice. You get to meet somebody who, you know, you can call if the market's freaking out and you're freaking out with it. So if you know a Bitcoiner online, you can always maybe reach out to them, because you probably know a Bitcoiner even if you think you don't. There's quite a lot of us now, and we're all over the internet, especially on Twitter. So, you know, try that too for that peer-to-peer kind of currency experience. And if not that, then Cash App is a really, really easy and good way to buy Bitcoin right now. It's good for newbies. It's created by Jack from Twitter and his team. It's on your phone, so it's an easy app. You put in all of your information, you put in your debit card number or your bank account number, and then you just buy a little bit of that there. And then you want to transfer it to a wallet where you control the private keys, or even a hardware wallet if you invest in one of those, which is our biggest recommendation.
I recommend that too. Yes, Anastasiya, you recommended the Trezor to me, you know, last summer, and I got myself one, and I love it. It's great, and definitely, in my opinion, just about the best way to secure your money. So yeah, as I said, global adoption really is the name of the game. That's why, as Anastasiya was just saying, Bitcoiners and crypto enthusiasts are very open and helpful to new people, because we want to see the community grow. We want to see more people adopting and actually not just holding, but using cryptocurrencies, you know, selling things on Craigslist and taking crypto. Craigslist actually has a checkbox now when you create an ad, cryptocurrency, okay. That's fantastic. That's what we're looking for. We're seeing Bitcoin ATMs popping up in the West, you know, things like that. There's countries coming out with their own cryptocurrencies, even though they're highly centralized and not actually legit at all. But that just goes to show that how threatened they are, that they're scrambling to try to adapt and make themselves look appealing, still more appealing than the crypto, because it's very much disrupting and threatening their entrenched status.
Yeah, and one of the things actually that I'm kind of battling against right now, and many of us are, is KYC practices. What's been happening in the last few years is governments have tried to regulate, you know, all of these exchanges and all of these apps that ask you for KYC, which is know your customer, which usually means that they want your full name, your social security number, your passport number, your phone number, your email, your address, your firstborn child, you know, all of those things to verify your identity and to protect consumers. That's what all of these organizations talk about. They talk about that we need all of this data to protect you from people who try to steal your data. And one, that's completely circular logic that doesn't work out, because now there's two people who have all that data, you and this other company, and all of the employees in that company, and all of the servers and computers in that company, where any smart hacker can just go in and grab it, right? We've been seeing that all of Facebook's data got leaked. The credit bureau's data got leaked, right? And identity theft is a headache. And it's terrible, and people don't want to work with you through it, and it takes forever to try to get your identity back, and these people can be doing anything with your credits and anything with opening up new bank accounts and just ruining your life, and you could end up paying for all of that.
Right.
So I, in fact, think that KYC practices are the opposite of protecting consumers, and they actually hurt consumers. So if there's anything that you can do to prevent you having to use KYC, so not using exchanges that have KYC, not using things like Cash App, which KYC, right? Doing the whole person-to-person thing in a public, safe place, right? Also being smart about it. On exchanges that don't KYC, and just trying to stay away from all of those companies that are trying to get your data away from you and trying to corrupt your privacy and trying to basically then use your data and sell it to other companies to make a profit. That's you helping walk us into this new paradigm, this kind of new society where we're more protected than we were before. Because you're right, all of these companies are trying to become more palatable, but they're still using these really sneaky, tricky, old system things that they swear is so good for us, but really gives them more control and more power over our lives. And we want to make sure that when we're starting to use these new currencies and these new technologies, that we're not just falling into the same exact traps as we were before.
Right, right. So before we wrap up, Anastasiya, why don't you tell the viewers what you're up to and what you're working on?
Sure. So Bitcoin was actually a really amazing thing that happened to me. And I know there's a lot of stories like that out there too. But when I got into this industry, I was so excited to be involved that I did so much work for free. I volunteered for different projects. I, tried to start companies with friends, et cetera, et cetera. And now, 4 years later, I actually run 3 different companies. The first one is Be Your Own Vault. And basically, we're a security education company for anybody from beginners to kind of a more expert level who want to get into cryptocurrencies and who want to learn how to secure their digital assets. Security is really important because we have, hackers galore all over the internet. And even besides that, you could just make a mistake and then not be able to get back into your wallet, or a wallet could crash because the code maybe isn't up to par, or because the wallet went through a big update and somebody missed the line of code. So you just want to make sure that you're prepared for any of those scenarios, and that if something does happen where you need to find your private key and get your coins, you can do that calmly and rationally, and you already have a plan in place. And also we help a little bit with inheritance too, and kind of have a non-technical solution of how to make sure that your Bitcoin or your crypto is passed on to the rest of your family. And so we do private consulting. We also sometimes do a workshop at different conferences, and we're working on putting all of that stuff into videos, or maybe even an ebook or something like that for you guys as well. But we're always open to chat and help you with your specific issue or your specific strategy, and kind of walk you through that. Phone hodl is something that we came up with last year as well. It's a little gadget for your phone to make sure that you're always hodling your phone. You don't lose it in an Uber. You don't drop it and break your entire screen and then have to fork out $500 for a new screen. So it's also one of those little security features that you can use to make sure that you're always attached to your phone and to your Bitcoin. So yeah, this thing's important. It has all of your data in it, and losing it is a pain in the butt. I know, because I've done it. I've dropped it. I've had to exchange screens. I actually have 2 iPhones over there that are just like cracked to all heck. And then I had a best friend in college who would literally lose her phone every 3 months and would have to fork out $1,000 to get a new one. It was pretty terrible. So we have that. We have a website, phonehodl.com, so you can check that out. We usually have some really good deals going on there too. And then my last and one of my favorite projects is Nexus Kids. It's a charity to teach children how to code. And so if you go to nxskids.com, You can find a ton of free resources for your children to learn how to make videos and learn how to code and create video games. And, you know, there's this math bot created by another Bitcoiner that teaches kids math through coding and through programming, and through really fun games. And all of these resources that we promote are free. We also, you know, collect donations and laptops and tablets and anything like that that you have that we can donate to kids who don't have access to that kind of technology, so that they can take part in the revolution, and, you know, they can get Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, and they can learn how to have this really valuable skill that, especially, you know, sitting under quarantine seems like a really great career over here, you know, sitting at your computer isolated in your home. But yeah, we just try to help any way we can through that. So if you guys are interested, check it out, and the guys will put all those links below.
Yep. Put them down there. So very cool. Thank you.
Of course.
So that's what we have for you today, guys. Thanks for stopping by and watching. You know, really think about what we've discussed today. Of course, never spend beyond your means, but invest in your future. Think about the world is changing. The question is, are you going to change with it? Are you going to be ahead of the curve? And not only invest in something that could be very lucrative for you, but you're also supporting the good side of history, essentially. I think that's really something to take into account and take seriously. So thank you, Anastasiya, for joining us on this episode. It's been very enjoyable and I think informative as well. Again, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, help us grow. We appreciate you coming by and watching, and we'll see you next week, of course. But until then, be empowered, be inspired, and be encouraged.